Thank you, Derek. Thank you for your time and introduction. Thanks to the New South Wales Farmers Organisation and all the delegates and the staff here today for your time. It's good to be here today. It's good to look across and see some familiar faces and meeting new people out in the stalls out there. It's been also a good experience. I'm here today to speak to you about local land services, but also to hear from you what matters for you as landholders and whether the work we do meets your needs. So today I want to speak about the local land services model and the plans to improve it and the ways that local land services works in the future. I also want to talk specifically about some areas of interest for the delegates. So I was speaking to somebody on the way up the road the other day and he said to me local land services was probably the most aptly named government agency that we had. The value of our proposition is in our name itself. We are locally based, we have local boards who represent 11 regions, we have local staff. We work closely with landholders, just not farmers, but people who hold land. And we get across and we provide services to the best of our ability to as many people as we can. Our focus is on improving locally relevant services to land managers and the community that are integrated, that improve methods and approaches of primary production, protect the quality of our production, and help them manage our state's natural resources. We have staff on the ground that provide farmers with information and resources relating to good practice and up-to-date agricultural production advice. We support farmers to protect their land and marine and water environments, produce, businesses and ways of life through biodiversity and natural resource management programs. I recently had the opportunity to visit Port Stephens to inspect the DPI Fisheries Institute, hatchery. In the same time, we had a look at some of the work that local land services have been doing in the Hunter riverine environment, the mouth of the river, and they showed us some mud flats which had been emoliated from degraded land. And the figure that was given to me was that each hectare of these mud flats was producing $14,000 worth of revenue annually for the fisheries industry. It was a great example of where our money is being placed for a return on investment. Local Land Services delivers programs and services that help farmers deal with pests and weeds, improves their access to important state resources like travelling stock reserves. And we have established with Landcare a Landcare Coordinators Initiative, which is well poised to deliver upon many natural resource management solutions in the future. Many of our staff are farmers. Having grown up in regional communities, we know what services and support are required and we're held accountable at a local level. As a landholder myself and a ratepayer, my experiences have been relatively positive with previous reiterations of local land services, and I've enjoyed the benefit of courses, a coordinated approach to pest management, particularly foxes, to protect my lambing ewes. But most of all, I remember during the drought when we put a sacrifice feedlot up, but the CMAs came back in and helped us fix up that country, and it's now the most productive paddock on the farm. So there's no other really independent organisation like us in New South Wales, and Australia for that matter. Our value proposition of working with landholders is extremely strong. We have 800 staff across the state. We have 25 Indigenous employers as well who work in many different areas of our services. And I think that in years to come, we'll look around at the other states, and if we get this right and keep delivering value for money, then we'll still have this organisation supporting our landholders. So where are we headed? Well, obviously, I took this job with a fair bit of intrepidation because it's a large role and it's got many stakeholders, but I'm here to make it better. And the Minister's direction and consultation and in conjunction with working with people like Matt and Derek since starting as a chair and has had my focus on improving the governance, improving our communications and stakeholder engagement, bettering our financial sustainability and investing in our people, systems and operations, basically delivering upon the Act. In the short term, we'll make some refinements to the way that local land services operates. So I'd like to speak to you on these topics: financial sustainability, governance, landholders, you, and our services and travelling stock routes. So financial sustainability. It's a little bit difficult to talk in too much detail because we've had an ERC or a minute being submitted yesterday, and we'll soon put in a cabinet submission, so it is cabinet in confidence. But I would remind you that 20% of our revenue comes from ratepayers, you, 80% from government. And despite, I might be so brave as to correct the Treasurer that 159 million is the total figure of our budget, but 20% of that is ratepayers, and the 40% is state and 40% is federal. We've got a responsibility, having this money in our budget, to make sure that we spend it wisely, and we have to make sure that we're responsible and making sure that we cut down duplication and provide consistent services across the state without losing our localism. So as part of this strategy, we need to make some efficiency gains in reducing costs, better position, and this is the most important thing, better positioning ourselves for future funding opportunities, ensure that we use these funds effectively to get the best return on our investment. We need to better utilise our capital assets, and we need to get our house in order if we're going to be effective in delivering the proposed biodiversity reforms. Governance. So 2016-17, we'll be improving our governance arrangements in response to the governance audit conducted by the Natural Resource Commission in 2015. Part of this will be looking at the way our local board of chairs and regional boards are structured and operate. I would underline there'll be no changes in the number of people or the numbers, 11, of our local boards. I'd also at this point in time like to thank all our board members for their huge contribution and the volunteerism that goes with that. It is an incredibly powerful group of people. We ran an independent recruitment process for the nominated board members across May and June, and I'm pleased to say that we've had 400 applicants, over 400 applicants. 46% of these applicants are female, and there was 25 Indigenous individuals who stuck up their hand. So for me, that's a great indicator of people wanting to get involved and have a say, and I welcome that. We're working through these applications at the moment for the next stage of the recruitment process. In 2017, we're going to run the elected process. And I know that the previous election had its challenges for candidates, for voters and for the local land services, but next year I'm committing to make sure that this is a more effectively run election. We'll work closely with experts on improving processes and communication, administrations and nominations for voting. And in that respect, I'd really encourage you and everybody in your regions to enrol to vote. If you haven't already done so, forms are available from your office, local office, the website, the 1300 number, and also our lounge upstairs can direct you to where to enrol to vote. It's very important. So broadly, we'll be making other changes to strengthen our service delivery to ensure that we satisfy the needs of our customers. This will include looking at the services we provide and making sure they are relevant to farmers and in line with the state priorities. We need to have a clear delivery value proposition to the farmer and the landholder. If you know you're receiving value for money and your taxes. When I pay my rates each year, it's a question that I ask. And one thing that I've learnt in the last 6 months is that although we get services and we help people in the community grow more things in a sustainable manner, the real value add that we're giving to you is the protection of your product. And if you're in China and you go to a supermarket and you buy Australian beef versus Brazilian beef and you pay 20% more, one of the reasons they're paying that premium is because our state and the services we provide has very strong protection of biosecurity. So it's assurance and insurance. It's an insurance policy that you're paying for, amongst other things. There are a number of external processes underway that will influence the local land services focus in the coming 2 years. I'm aware of some of these processes relate to motions being discussed today, so I'd like to address a few of those. Now, pest animals. The NRC draft Pest Animal Review makes a number of recommendations to strengthen pest animal management within the local land services. Well, we've provided feedback to the NRC and hope that the recommendations of the final report relate to these activities and local land services control becomes more legislative. Local land services works with landholders to support access to baits and other control methods to conduct a broad and coordinated pest animal control activity. We're currently not funded to provide these as free, but we charge landholders at a discounted rate to recover costs. And under current arrangements, we're not in a position to approach the service in any other way. Recently, local land services regions have been implementing other programs to support this effective targeted of pest animals. And in the Riverina, a good example is a sample of wild dogs have been fitted with GPS collars to provide updates to their locations and their satellite tracking, which is giving us more information to understand their movements and patterns and habitats so we can control them more effectively. We want to be able to continue to expand these programs in the future, and this review that the NRC is conducting is vital to that. The same can be said for ag advisory services or extension services, you may know, which we are continuing to focus on improving. This, as you may know, began when the DPI's role in the extension came across to our organisation in 2013. We now work very closely, and always have done, with the DPI and many other agencies and research and development entities to ensure that we have the most updated evidence-based information that we can pass on to you, the landholder and farmer. We provide agricultural services, just not in agricultural advisory, but in biosecurity, natural resource management and agricultural production. Including but not limited to pasture management and water. I like to think of this as the P&L and the balance sheet, and as farmers we all know that the P&L is the thing that we get up in the morning thinking about how to drive profitability of our assets. The balance sheet is our land, and that's where most of our returns come from. So it's very important that we engage and work with natural resource management and biodiversity reforms so that we can further improve that balance sheet return. So on biodiversity, we're ready and waiting for the reforms to come our way. We have resources in place. We have up to 24 staff additional that are working through the current PVPs. We are in a position to enact the reform once it hits the table, and I can thank Derek and his team for their continued support about making sure that we are funded to do so. We need to get our house in order over the next year, so we are ready to take on these reforms. Travelling stock routes. We're committed to an excellence in future management of travelling stock routes within their care and control. I know the government is committed to maintaining these stock routes for emergency management and for primary purposes, and unlocking them to support a broader range of uses, including recreation. We need to reinvest into these vital networks. We need to use them for poor seasonal conditions, and local land services plans to continue to facilitate access to travelling stock routes during drought where we can. We also support drought management for providing landholders with access to funding, and recently we received 200 applications for our pest and weed drought funding package supported by the Australian Government. We're now working through these applications. So President, finally I'd like to finish by saying we're here to make this organisation and this agency a better place. It's an honour to work with the staff who are tremendously committed to providing these services and have great technical depth. And I encourage you to all to visit Local Land Services Lounge to meet our team during a break from the conference for some further information. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to meeting you.